Here's a little bit different setup. I've got a barrel chained to the front loader of the tractor. I'm out in the woods on my own, and instead of running off the tractor battery, I'm doing a little experiment where I've got a small car battery that we use for the starter on our sawmill, and I've got that out here with me fully charged, and I'm just seeing how many buckets I can fill with a fully charged battery that's not being topped up by a running generator. And so far I've got 4 full buckets. Here's a little tree growing in an area where it gets a bit of midday sun, and so what I'm doing is I'm taking some of these ferns that are around here, breaking them off and laying the tops of the ferns on the ground, mostly to the south and west. This is pretty well shaded to the west, but the south, it's got partial shade, but the sun's going to be right overhead here in another hour and a half or so, cooking right down on it. And in doing that, I'm trying to help the ground keep a little more moisture. Some of these little trees have had phenomenal growth. Here's a tree that's going right up through the top of its tube. I'm just pulling the tube up here. Very healthy tree. All the trees in this particular area, and indeed in most of the areas that we've been working, are doing quite well under very adverse conditions this year. So we're hoping the watering will just give them the boost they need to make it to the fall rains. This tree must have over a foot, 14 inches maybe, of new growth this spring. We're finding that soil conditions make a huge difference. I hit a pocket of dead trees yesterday and couldn't figure out what was wrong. They were planted under what seemed like ideal conditions. Shady, really well mulched. And then I remembered that when I was planting that particular bunch of trees, I'd hit rocks. So clearly they're excessively drained. That is, the rain had passed right through the rocks and gone beyond the reach of their roots. So again, live and learn. Here's another tree that's doing very well, just right near the last one that I just talked about. Now this tree's in pretty dense weeds, and actually the weeds are shading it and shading the ground, which might be more important, and helping keep the moisture in. So I'm very, very careful to leave the weeds to the south of it and try to open it up a little bit to the north and to the east if possible. This is a reasonably shady area, but to the south and especially to the west and southwest, that's when the afternoon sun starts to get lower and can shoot through the trees, and it's at its hottest then. So I'm just carefully weeding right around the tree as I water, and then giving it a good watering. Otherwise, letting the weeds do their job for it. So everything's got a use. I just showed some happy trees. I don't know if this is going to show in this light, but here's a very unhappy little tree. It's got lots of brown, or should have nice fresh green. It hasn't grown hardly at all this spring. Last spring it didn't grow hardly at all. When I water it, the water just runs off the surface of the ground. So I take my little well, it's a little chainsaw wrench with a screwdriver end, and stab the screwdriver in the ground around it a bit. Then I'm going to dribble in water very slowly. See if I can get it to drink up a little bit. Then I'll come back and hit it later on the way back. Then last thing I'll tamp those holes I made closed as best I can with my boot, so it doesn't leave air holes because if the roots grow into those air holes, the roots will die. The root tips will die. We have salvaged trees like this before by watering them, so we'll see. Here's another very happy tree. It's a good planting situation here. I'm pointing west here. That's west. And this is morning, so it's getting morning light, very good morning light. But this fern here is giving it some, and this log down here are both giving it some protection from the western sun. And it's got tall trees up here to the south that give it good southern, well, some good southern protection. The sun is so high in the sky in late July, almost August here, that it can be hard to get that southern protection even with fairly tall trees nearby. But that's really needed for these cedars. They do not like full sun. They'll die in full sun. They like partial shade, and they can do pretty well even in pretty deep shade. I see my little hand tremor is affecting the picture. I apologize for that. I try to hold it steady, but can't stop that tremor.